Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Caro, and welcome to Politics in Perspective, deep into fall, I guess, now, right? Pretty soon it'll be cold around the country, but obviously it's not cold when it comes to politics, unless, of course, you see some of the tactics being used today. But our show this week is dedicated to two serious, very serious issues. One going on in California, that's Prop 50. I'll have in our today's difference making interview, I'll have Congressman Doug LaMalfa, who's greatly affected by this, but also, let's face it, the entire country will be greatly affected by this. But I'm also going to talk about what I think is the biggest story of the week that is being overshadowed. And at the end, we'll do our political roundup. So let's just get to the biggest story of the week. If you watch the news, it is the utter destruction of the White House that they think is the biggest story of the week. Let's take a look at this, perhaps my favorite meme of the week from a friend of mine, Buzz Patterson. We got to get him on the show. This is Hillary Clinton claiming she's aghast that President Trump is adding a ballroom. Of course, she says it's not his house. We're aware of that, Hillary. We read history unlike you. It's your house. Well, it's the people's house. It's not particularly mine, but it is the people's house. And he's, quote, destroying it. Well, of course, and Buzz says, and so you know who Buzz Patterson is. He used to carry the nuclear football for the Clintons, and he witnessed a lot of the craziness that they did, their failure to do things. Really got to get him on. But he says your husband had sex in the Oval Office. Probably should sit this one out. But what's amazing about this, just to have a picture, they're taking down part of the East Wing there, and they're going to put in a ballroom. Now, the reason for this ballroom is because no event in the White House can exceed 150 people. Well, if you've been to a wedding, I don't know, anytime soon, that's 15 tables of 10 people. That's not very big at all. I actually didn't know that figure. That's stunningly low. If you have a state dinner, you're going to bring in way more than 150 people. So what do? They put up tents. I've been there when they've had tents at the Christmas party in the White House. It's absurd. A tent? The United States has events for foreign dignitaries in tents. So look, he's putting up a ballroom. It's being paid by others and some of his own money. So it's not actually on your house. You are not paying for it. So why is this a big story? Well, it's a big story, of course. We'll talk more about this in political roundup. But the fact is the Democrats have nothing else to talk about. They can only be in opposition. So what does opposition look like? Well, here's what Congressman Hakeem Jeffries from Brooklyn. By the way, we're shortly to be governed by New York. Mondami in New York City. You have Jeffers in Congress and Schumer. They're getting quite the power over there. It used to be California. Now it looks like it's going to be New York City. It's going to make big decisions for America. But here you go. Here's Hakeem Jeffries. A warning. He issues this warning. These people are going to be held accountable no matter how long it takes. And the commentary by this guy on Twitter is they continue to threaten revenge on the one hand while hyperventilating about Trump's revenge tour on the other. So let's just talk about Hakeem Jeffries here for a minute. Saying, now look, they put out a list of the funders. There's some really big corporations, especially tech, that are funding this. Now, of course, the Democrats have turned this into pay for play. Anytime someone donates, apparently, including Trump, who donates his salary, It's nefarious because they don't understand charity. They only understand government taking money under threat of putting you in jail, unless, of course, it's their own people. They don't have to go to jail for breaking the law. But there is Hakeem Jeffries threatening those to be held accountable, no matter how long it takes. For doing what? For giving money to the White House Historical Association so that a ballroom can be added so we don't have to put foreign dignitaries in tents, especially in the winter, by the way. Hello? That is how upset he gets over that. And that is dominating news. If you looked at CNN and that's what they talk about. But that is a perfect segue into what I think is really the most important story of the week, and it's not unrelated to Hakeem Jeffries' threat. So let's take a look at what I think is really the most important story of the week. And that relates to what was disclosed by the declassified documents, and Catherine Herridge, the reporter, who I think lost her job at CBS because she was too forthright. But let's take a look what she posted this week and the disclosure as to where Arctic frost got its start. Now, what's Arctic frost? That was the massive, and we're going to talk to Congressman LaMalfa about this, the massive effort by what I call the Biden gang. This is my retweet of Catherine Herridge. Sorry, I cut her picture in half there. The massive effort to spy on people opposed to the establishment in Washington, D.C. And what we find, remember, it's 92 conservative groups, including Charlie Kirk's group and others. We also found out that they point blank were spying on U.S. senators, all Republicans, right? So what do we find out here? The Biden administration's attorney general, that's Merrick Garland, thank God he never got to the Supreme Court. What an absolute disaster of a legal mind, if he had one. What a complete subversion of America that occurred under Garland. But his deputy, Lisa Monaco, and then FBI Director Christopher Wray, all signed off on the FBI probe known as Arctic frost. And below that, you see from Chuck Grassley. Now, of course, this is the Trump administration given these documents to Congress. And it was based on, quote, limited detail and basis, including open source media reporting, meaning just the legacy media claims, which was the similar level of justification that they used for the whole Russia. So on virtually nothing, they started spying. And this is really the biggest story of the week. It is the biggest story of the last 50 years. I cover this in my book, The Lessons of the American Civilization Over My Shoulder. And it goes under this basic premise. We have reached the point in our history, in our civilization, where those in power are protecting themselves from the voters. I've said it before, I'll say it endlessly. Those in power are protecting themselves from the elected, not Trump per se, and not even a president or a senator per se, but the entrenched bureaucratic establishment, those within the FBI, those within the CIA, those in the State Department, and throughout the bureaucracies. They literally are trying to wait out democracy. And what I mean by that is they don't actually believe in democracy. They don't believe that if a opposition party president gets in, that he has or she has the right to change policies, and those change in policies has to go and filter down throughout the entire government. They don't believe in that. They literally believe that A, they know better than you and me, and that they are there and they are going to resist policy change and wait for the next president. And by resisting policy change, they contribute to problems within the country, which they believe will help elect a new president because things aren't working out. Now, look, and I cover this in the book, The Lessons of the American Civilization. It is very normal in history for those in power to love being in power. It is very normal in history for them to do everything it takes to hold on to that power. I go through examples in history of this in the book. But that doesn't mean it's okay. It means we have to be vigilant. This is what, when Benjamin Franklin said, a republic, if you can keep it, and he said you, meaning us, we the people. He didn't expect leadership or those elected to protect freedom. He knew the dynamic of history. It's up to us. But there's little doubt that those in power are trying to keep it away from us. Remember, 9 of the richest 20 counties in America surround Washington, D.C. That's where the money is. Famous Depression era criminal Willie Sutton was asked once why he robs banks, and he said, that's where the money is. Well, that's why Washington, D.C. is surrounded by so many people, because that's where the money is. And the biggest story of the last half century, something that dwarfs, absolutely dwarfs Watergate, which was a third-rate burglary as it came to be known, is the magnitude at which they're willing to do this, how much they're willing to lie about it. Merrick Garland and Ray were not truthful. How much they're willing to lie to judges about it. They got these subpoenas and they lied to judges to get those subpoenas. They never gave notice to the senators and said, oh, by the way, we're surveilling you. I mean, imagine that, one branch of government spying on another. If this is allowed to go on, then it's the beginning of the end of the republic, certainly as we know it. And you have to push back on this. We'll talk more about that in the political roundup. But at the end of the day, the fact that the media doesn't cover this, the fact that the Democrats spend so much time on the East Wing construction is a way to hide this so that you don't know exactly how bad it is that the FBI director and the attorney general did everything they could to keep Republicans out of office. That should never happen. And we need to do something about it. And that includes letting everyone you know about it. But it also includes never allowing people like that in office again. That's our first segment. I want to thank our sponsors. PoliticalVanguard.com, of course, sponsors this. That's my news media outlet. You can go to that. Ex-American News on Twitter shows this. WorldviewTube.com shows this as well, AUNTV, and we'll be right back with Congressman Doug LaMalfa. Welcome back, everybody, to Politics in Perspective. Today, I'm joined by one of my favorite people in all of Congress, my adopted Congressman, Doug LaMalfa. And let's bring him on. Doug, how are you today? Thanks so much for coming on.
Hey,
Why don't-
doing pretty good. We're in the middle of rice harvest up here, other than all the shutdown stuff. At least we can keep this going here. So,
all right. And what's that behind you? Is that your?
well, that's our shop building here. I'm just kind of pulled up in a corner here.
Okay. And you're in Butte County today?
Yes, sir.
All right. So if we could, why don't we get right to it? I want to talk to you about Prop 50 because you're affected by that, as is actually the whole United States. If we can show the maps, uh, the map on the right is the existing map of California's congressional districts. And if you take a look at them, there was a principle involved in the constitutional amendment that was put in to make this, which is communities of interest. And
Absolutely.
up north is where Congressman LaMalfa is today. On the right, he is in the section that is baby blue. But now you can
Yep.
see on the left what they propose to do to that. And if you look at the very top, you see you're looking at parts of Modoc, you're looking at parts of Trinity, Del Norte, all the way will be in Nancy Pelosi's district. So, Doug, uh, personally and otherwise, why are you against Prop 50?
Well, Tom, the voters have affirmed three different occasions on initiatives where they had the vote on the ballot to take it out of the hands of legislators and put it in the hands of the independent commission. As those maps have shown, the legislators can't handle responsibility. First time I ran for the assembly back in the day was '01 and '02, and they that was the last time the legislature had done it, right? So they called that one that was drawn in '01, '02 the Incumbent Protection Plan, and it was really designed for the politics of the legislators to be uh, preeminent and not what's the best for communities of interest, as you said. So you looked at the baby blue map up in the corner, the northeast corner of the state. It includes Modoc County and Siskiyou, and has city of Redding, city of Chico, city of Oroville, city of Yuba City, places like that. There's kind of there's a common theme of rural agriculture, small town, that sort of thing going through there. And they've been, I think they've been itching for years to draw the lines from east to west, from the Nevada border to the ocean. And so uh, if they pull off this scam with Prop 50, it's the worst example I've seen in the years I've been around directly in politics. There's probably other bad examples too, but of what a ripoff politics this is. And the whole goal, it isn't that they've redone the census halfway through the 10 years at a 5-year mark or whatever and said, hey, we need to reapportion these lines so they're even better. No, that isn't it at all. It's not that they're improving anything. It's merely a political outcome. And yes, I'm one of the 5 guys on the uh, receiving end of this deal. And not only that, but let's not forget too, they want to ensure that 5 seats flip hands party wise, but there's at least 4 others that they're ensuring are going to be non-competitive now. Dems don't want to have to compete to hold those seats, like a couple of the Valley ones, one in Orange County. So really, it's a 9-seat swing into the safe Democrat column that they're trying to accomplish here. So yeah, California's majority Democrats, and there's a whole bunch of people think they're getting even with Trump or something by doing this. We've got to save democracy from Trump and that sort of nonsense. So it's really very convoluted. They threw it together at the last minute. They had to waive uh, election laws and rules that would normally. My understanding is that you have to have 131 days from once an election is called until it actually happens. They waived that down to 75, which was the exact day they passed it out of the legislature. I think August 21, if I remember right. 75 days till. I mean, that's less time that Kamala had to run for her presidency, right? So it's a unfunny joke that these guys are. I mean, if worse comes to worse, this thing passes, it changes the landscape. And then you look at other states across the country that are emulating this. Now they're going to blame it all on Texas. Well, there's core reasons what Texas they may have had a very good reason to do it, but that's all lost in the shuffle here. So other states will retaliate every 2 years, any state, anytime if they change hands on parties or whatever. Let's redraw the lines so we can favor ourselves. It'll be mayhem. People won't know who their representatives are or who's running or understand or probably begin not to even care.
Yeah. Okay, Doug. I agree with you 100%. I really want to focus in on the ag aspect of this.
Sure.
California is the biggest agricultural state in the country. I remember when we cherished California as feeding the world. You help feed the world. What does this potentially do? The ag in California doesn't get enough representation to begin with.
Part of the reason I ran in the beginning, I thought we needed a more agriculture or farmer type presence in the legislature. I didn't know it would turn into all this, in Congress and stuff. But you're going to have basically urban catered legislators being the representatives for here. You're going to have, on the North Coast, if it ends up being the same guy they have now, you're going to have a guy that wants to tear down dams, wants to turn all the water over to the fish, loves the wolf introduction up there in the Northeast. It is devastating wildlife and cattle and cattle herds and a whole list of this extreme environmental things that they're going to do because that's what the Marin County crowd loves. We have a termed out state senator that wants to run for the middle district, is my understanding. Hasn't said anything yet. He's trying to keep his fingerprints off of it because he had to help pass the legislation to benefit giving himself a new seat. He even told them, allegedly, according to the Channel 3 reporter Ashley Zavala, that he would exchange his vote if they drew him a district. So boom, the one Butte County's in. It's got a nice handy district for a termed out state Democrat legislator to be in. So then there's one more district to the south. So they divided my 10 county district up and drawn and quartered it into three different districts. And that means the agriculture voice, the voice for saying, let's build more water supply. Let's keep the water in agriculture. Not all of it has to flow out the Delta for a now non-existent smelt, as they seek to take even more water and ship it that way. We can't even get water to Southern California, which is a lot of times the argument, like, well, Southern Cal's taking all our water. That isn't really it. It's environmental. At this point, about nearly 80% of the water is going for environmental purpose in this state. If you talk about water that's either controlled and impounded by lakes and such, or the water that just flows that we haven't done anything about trying to capture. We're trying to do a raise on Shasta Dam so we can hold 600,000 more acre feet. We're trying to accomplish building Sites Reservoir west of my place here, about 40 miles in Colusa and Glenn County. That's been talked about for 50 years, and they're dragging their feet in Sacramento. Supposedly we'll have a groundbreaking in October of next year now. It should have been this year. I talked to Governor Newsom about it a while here. Said, sir, why can't we move the ball on getting the Water Commission to approve the water rights? That's one of the hangups. Then it's more environmental. Then it's more study this, study that. They just use these tools. And so, bottom line, what your question is, you're not going to have a voice like mine or others representing these areas that are going to advocate that direction. It's going to be all urban type voices that only want to have the best possible rating by the Sierra Club or NRDC or whatever environmental group. And they'll come over, they'll pretend to pay attention, but they'll probably, I don't know, most Democrats just come up to Chico and hide out on the Chico State campus and don't, when they visit up here. And I think the representation is going to go to pretty much zero. You're going to hear all the extreme stuff the Democrats are for these days, and the Democrats have lost control of their party. You look at this No King stuff. You look at the deal. We're trying to get a simple 7-week CR, straight, clean extension done. They're afraid to do it, and that's what's going to be representing around here. Same guys like that. It's unbelievable that we're having to deal with this right now. But if the voters get suckered on this Prop 50 thing, they think they're getting even with Trump. Like, no, they're getting even with themselves long term.
You mentioned the shutdown a bit and the radicalism of it. Are they really serious about $1 trillion in new spending? What's their off ramp? Because $1 trillion is ridiculous. Is there any off ramp to them? And I'm glad you guys are holding the line, but what do you see?
Tom, in some ways I feel bad for them because I don't know they have an off ramp. they've painted themselves into a corner with the extreme wing of, I don't know if you know if it's their party. Is it the Socialist Party? Is it something even worse than that? That they've catered to that group so much that they are afraid to come back to, say, a moderate level here. And I mean, when I talk to colleagues back there, and you know, there's a moderate tone to our conversations here, but then you see the rhetoric out there at the rallies and things like that, and extreme rhetoric. I mean, about Charlie Kirk afterwards. Of course, Trump gets his dose all the time as well. Um, I don't know where they go from here, because I've heard chatter this thing could go all the way to Thanksgiving for a shutdown. So, and part of the problem is that the media doesn't really report how it's happening very capable, very, very, very efficiently or whatever. They and it's easy for everybody to say, oh, well, it's both sides do it. Both sides, they're equally as bad. Nonsense. We're doing a simple CR. We shouldn't even be doing CRs. We should be doing the appropriation committee process in the light of day in front of people. It's on TV. It's having hearings going over line item by line item, more or less, on how spending is going to happen. And they're blocking us from being able to go back and do that work. We can't really convene and do much until this is resolved. And it's just, people should be angry. They should be furious. But it's a real common practice for both sides do it. They're all the same. Like, I think our side stands for a heck of a lot different set of principles than whatever principle they may be espousing over there. And it's just keeping government in check. Try and be, you said the word trillion dollars. I mean, what, we're getting used to the word trillion, throwing that around. A $2 trillion annual deficit of the budget, and we're hitting 38 trillion in our national debt. It's a good thing that interest rates aren't worse, because the debt service on that would devour the discretionary part of our federal budget, which is only about 30% or so is discretionary. The rest of it is locked in spending. So I mean, is it Republicans that are pushing for more and more on that? We don't have a perfect record on the past, and it usually involves is when we acquiesce too much to their demands that it gets worse. And so I see people are upset. You guys don't fight hard enough and stuff. I just, it's always this balance between trying to keep things operating and how much can we get in policy change or spending priority change. Tried for years to get Planned Parenthood defunded and all that, and we always lose out on that because we'll have a government shutdown. That's really bad. And government shutdowns do cost money, Tom. They cost a lot of money, and it's not like it's really going to, for those that think like, well, hey, shut down the government. It's always good. We don't need all that government. Yeah, I know it sounds fun, but it doesn't work that way. And those workers are all going to get paid anyway. The money's still going to go out anyway later on when we finally do turn the thing back on. Now, if we never turn it on ever again, then I guess that's a different Rubicon we'd be crossing there. But it's just I'm at a loss these days, Tom.
Okay, Doug. One last thing. It came to light recently that the Biden White House DOJ was spying on U.S. senators. How did that?
About 8 of them.
What was your? Yeah. How did that affect? I mean, you're a patriot. You fight for things. How did that strike you? And what was the feeling like among your colleagues?
That's a big time problem. It makes me want to just deactivate my phones and not be. It makes you maybe not be available in the public and stuff like that, because they're hacking. Not that you have any big thing to hide or whatever, but it's just an invasion, and it undermines our ability to be effective when you have to look over your shoulder all the time for that sort of thing. So these guys need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law available on this for this kind of spying. This is espionage. That's bad stuff. And I know, again, for normal people out there say, well, nobody ever gets prosecuted. Nobody ever goes to jail for all this stuff. It's just, when Democrats are in charge and the Biden gang, they'd send somebody at 4 a.m. down with a whole big SWAT team to go grab a guy. They could have just asked him a few questions. And our side, we want to go through due process. We want to have absolute ironclad information that will get a conviction, but it takes forever, and there's so much obfuscating and misdirection on all that. It's so difficult to get to a conclusion on that. There's people need to be in jail, in prison on this, and on many other topics as well. The corruption, it just comes out more and more every day, and it's kind of funny that, people with the hat says Trump was right about everything, but I can't find very many instances where these things he said about him getting spied on in his campaign and this sort of things, the senators, like, it all seems to come true. 6 months ago's conspiracy comes true, right? I hear that a lot too. So it's pretty bad. And voters, come on, voters, why are you voting for these people that keep doing this stuff? We ain't perfect. I get it. And we have some issues you probably don't like on the Republican side here and there. But let's look at the big picture. California is going to be facing $8.50, $9 gas coming spring because of the ineptness on energy down in Sacramento and keeping the refineries open in an atmosphere that they can stay open. What's that going to mean for people? For a school bus taking kids to school, $9 diesel now. For a pest control guy goes around spraying bugs and stuff like that, to do that in your home, he's going to have to raise his rates. The truck to deliver things to the store, you using the gas to take your kids to school, go to the store, go on vacation, go drive down the coast here, $10 gas is always higher down in Monterey and stuff like that. At what point are people going to say, I'm sick of this nonsense? They've been lying to us. You're seeing more and more voters starting to figure out that they've been lied to for a long time, because the Dems have pretend to cater to them on whether it's handouts from the government or whatever. Tom, it's just, people got to wake up to this stuff and not just keep buying the 5 or 10 second soundbite, like on this bogus thing that is Prop 50. Oh, Trump, the no kings. What does that even mean? I mean, if he was a king, a lot of things, or anybody was a king in this country, the founders rejected, George Washington rejected the whole king idea because they'd just gone through it there. And, some of our guys and the founders said, oh, maybe we should make George king. Like, no, we don't need another King George. We want to have duly elected people that have accountability and checks and balances. And that's what we have in this country. But I'll tell people quite a bit. The Constitution protects us, but we also have to protect the Constitution. It's our job as legislators, as citizens. Right now, this Prop 50 thing is going to push back on 3 different affirmations by voters to have an independent commission, and that destroys part of the Constitution. It should be seen as unconstitutional, but I don't know if the sucker does pass, if any courts will take it up or see it the way we are. Maybe since it was voted on a ballot, that validates all of it. But people are being walked down the primrose path on this issue, and then what will the next issue be? Because this legislature will be so emboldened to do whatever crazy things they want, whatever anti-freedom, anti-constitutional things, because, hey, all they have to do is say, oh, look at Trump, and then boom, a core of Democrat voters will vote for it no matter what it is. So I'm hoping we can get enough Republicans to get off their keisters and get these votes in. They're not performing on getting their votes in. You don't just want this to happen, as well as bring over some independent voters. We need a lot of independents that are looking at this bogus thing and saying, yeah, this isn't for me. And a core of Democrat voters. We have heard from them anecdotally, like, yeah, there's a lot of things, but we don't agree with this. So we need all those groups to be strong and say, they're trying to sell us that somehow we get something out of this. We don't get anything. We get worse process. We're a country that's supposed to like due process, and that's what the commission brings. And Tom, looking at the maps you showed, that's the exact reason on a poster right there why the legislators shouldn't be allowed to make their own maps, especially when you can draw one and if you're termed out and walk right into it supposedly. So this is a battle at a lot of levels here, not just about a few guys, whether they're going to be in Congress or not.
All right, boss. We've run over with you. I know you're busy. Good luck on the
Oh, you got one more? I got a minute.
You got one more? Okay. Well, we'll talk about this woman, this Whit Clark, who literally says that, oh, we're using this for leverage. This is our leverage.
Say the name. I'm sorry, Tom. Say the name again.
The Congresswoman Clark, who was on TV.
From Massachusetts, Kathleen, yeah.
Yeah, saying that she's using this moment in time because the Democrats, they said the quiet part out loud. They're using this as leverage. what I don't understand in this process, so in Tim Kaine
Are you being
said
specific to Prop
that
50, or are you talking about the shutdown?
the shutdown,
Okay,
you know,
yeah.
these people say one thing one day the next. What will the future be like? Here's the post from her saying that families are going to suffer, but it's leverage time.
Yeah, that that'd be like me rooting for $9 gas because we might be able to win elections in California on it, right? It's just
Yeah,
it's sick, and it's the shutdown is. And let's go back to the beginning. It was a 7-week extension of current spending. You might say Biden spending, just 7 more weeks while the Appropriations Committee does its work. There was no tricks in it, no policy changes, no nothing, and we passed straightforward CRs in the past. Oh, she wants to leverage this now. Oh, okay. So who's being harmed? Trump made some moves so that soldiers could get paid, and they're working on some other aspects of making sure some things can still flow. But we're going to run out of aces. 32 days after this shutdown has started here, and it's going to start to hurt. Now, in the Obama era, remember when we had a shutdown? They wanted to make it hurt. They deliberately rented barriers so you couldn't go into open air national parks like the World War II one that doesn't need any personnel. They purposely went out and made an effort to keep people out. Some of us went down there, moved the barriers, people started going in again. So the Dems like to make it hurt. Our side's like, well, how do we manage the situation and get through it and figure something out? So our side is more solution oriented, and it was such a simple bill. Hey, you know what? Too, the House passed the bill a little over a month ago. Okay, it's in the process, like on Schoolhouse Rock. It gets sent over to the Senate. The Senate contemplates the bill. So, Senate, what are you doing over there? You need 60 votes under your rules to make it happen, and you've known that all your life. So they can take up our bill as is, pass it, and send it to the president. Boom, it's over with. If they don't like our bill, they can amend it. They can put stuff in it that makes it where they can pass their House and send it back to the U.S. House from the Senate. And we'll contemplate, do we want to affirm the amendments to the bill we sent them? And then we'll be back at least doing business again. They won't even send something back to us that they agree on over there. Is that Schumer blocking it? They're up to maybe 4 Democrats. I think they're willing to, I think it's 3. I think there's a 4th one talking about wanting to do temporary spending. Anyway, um, you can't get 5 more Democrats or so to sign on to this thing. You would rather, like Ms. Clark said, leverage people because you think that's going to get you a win. You know.
it turns out
Sorry about
it
the rant.
seems to me that no, that's good, but it seems to me that their way of winning, the only seats they may pick up is in California because they're just the party of opposition. They don't have their own agenda, and they're just
It
raising
is.
costs on, on everyone. They talk about inflation and food prices. Okay,
They
are not Democrats making it impossible to do farming in California, or next to impossible?
well, we're still at it. I'm harvesting rice right now here, but it's getting worse and worse. They dump wolves in your backyard and expect you to just watch them eat your spring calves and stuff and not say anything about it. And then the Fish and Wildlife down there in Sacramento, well, we're putting in more aggressive measures so you can put tinsel and hang that from trees and stuff. And the wolf laughs at that and continues chomping on one of your new calves. So it's they don't care about us in Sacramento. That's the bottom line. And now they want to remove whatever voices we have. Hey, I'm not perfect at the voice here, but I try and do my best. And they want mine to be gone. They want several others to be gone so they can think they will get 5 more seats in the U.S. House and flip the majority over there. Well, if a bunch of other states join this chorus and keep flipping, keep changing lines, which nobody should be doing it's all bad. Does Texas have a fig leaf because of a court decision on there? I don't know. We got to figure out what that really means. But obviously, Texas is being blamed, and that's hyped to death, whatever truth there might be with the court case in Texas on lines being too extremely drawn for a racial outcome. That's been lost. But New York did it a couple years ago. Several Republicans lost out. They actually deposed a judge back there that was on a commission there, chased her out. She was a Democrat appointed judge too, because she didn't vote for a bad deal. They hounded her out of office in New York, and the governor installed somebody else, and then they got to do the lines they wanted. So it cost about 3 Republicans down back there in a partisan deal. North Carolina has had extra line, map redrawing in mid-decade, because there keeps being court cases where they're trying to ensure a racial outcome, and like the district is drawn too heavily for one particular type, and then they say, no, you got to go back and water it down, because it means only a certain minority group can win only 1 seat instead of maybe compete in 2. So it keeps going back and forth. Maybe if these things are a little more color blind or racial blind, you just draw maps that make sense, like communities of interest, as you said at the top here. This side of the mountain ridge is in that district, that one in that district, and keep cities together, keep counties together. I heard the town of Clovis down there in Central California is divided amongst 3 districts because it's so convoluted. Over here on the coast, you have Mendocino County is split basically in half, and Sonoma County split up, and Lake County split up in that middle district too, and being shoved between the 1st and 2nd districts in the new map. Well, does that really serve anybody? It serves a political interest. People, no matter your party, you got to look at this stuff and say, is this really what we want long term with process, or do you just want today's win? I saw sort of a quote the other day, I'm paraphrasing here, that if you're willing to put aside your principles for a temporary goal, temporary win, then you become the thing that you despise. So I thought that was pretty grounded. So so if people are voting for this because well, it's just temporary. Yeah, but it sets a precedent that's so dangerous for good process going forward long term, then you're going to get the government you asked for, and it ain't going to be good. It ain't perfect now, obviously, but as far as being more oppressive, look at what I call is the friendly countries. Look at the UK, look at Canada, look at Australia, New Zealand. They're censoring people's Facebook posts, for crying out loud. Now, how trivial is a Facebook post? You got cops showing up to the door, hauling people off because someone might get offended by that. I mean, they don't have the First Amendment like we do. I said a minute ago, the Constitution protects us, but if we don't protect the Constitution, then we don't have those rights anymore. And when you start saying, well, everything's hate speech, everything is this or that, our speech is eroded, and soon this becomes ingrained in law, and courts after courts affirm that. Your freedom will be gone, and you're sitting here like the frog in the pot of water that hasn't quite come up to heat yet.
Doug, this was awesome. I appreciate it. I love letting you just run with things. So thanks so much for joining us.
Sure, Tom.
If this Congress thing doesn't work out, I know a governor's mansion in Sacramento that needs someone with right minded. So I'll be there.
Only if Sacramento ends up in the state of Jefferson up north. I think they never vote for me in Marin or LA County and stuff. Maybe they will. Maybe as I mentioned, $9 gas. Maybe that does turn people around. Say, because how long can normal people afford these policies? There's not enough money you can borrow from whoever to funnel through government to get you 50 cents on the dollar at best of result when you take tax money and hand it out for all these goodies. I mean, how much does it cost to build a homeless complex, apartments in LA? Like $700,000 per unit are the numbers you hear when they build a new complex, new set of buildings to put homeless people in. 700 grand for basically an apartment unit. That's the numbers I hear. I say it's insane. Government is not going to solve the problems, because government, they clock out 9 to 5. They're there 40 hours a week. The rest of us have to live 168. So I'll stop, Tom, on the rant there. But yeah, it's people got to wake up to this stuff, and they got to start voting in a way that doesn't seem so hand to mouth, but looks long term, as the founding principles were. So thank you for having me.
All right, boss. You're welcome back anytime, and let me know what I can do to help you. What's your website for people for your campaign?
Oh, my website's easy. It's worldwideweb.douglamalfa.com.
DougLaMalfa.com. All right, boss.
That easy. If you
We'll
can
put
spell the
that
last
we'll put
name,
that
that
on.
he got it. So you know about that,
There you go.
Paisan, right?
Exactly. All right.
Okay.
Take care,
Thanks
and
for
we'll
having
be
me.
right back on
Okay,
Politics
we'll
in
see you. Bye
Perspective.
now.
Welcome back to Politics in Perspective. I hope you enjoyed Doug LaMalfa's rant there. America was started in significant degree by farmers. And so people did what he was doing when they created this Constitution, not so much what goes on in DC today. So I always love that. Just very straightforward, simple perspective and common sense. And Doug's always been that way, in addition to understanding history. And he has a real job, like a real job, getting 12 loads of rice in. Not not a lobbyist or not otherwise what they do in Washington, D.C. Speaking of common sense, and this segment, Political Roundup, a great deal of that is lost. The Democrats have become anything but the party of solutions. Instead, they've become just downright radical. I mean, take a look of what happened this week. It's been about a month since the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk over political differences. Because quite honestly, nothing Charlie Kirk said should have been controversial at any level. He just had a point of view, an extremely well-read, educated point of view, and he had discussions with other people. Maybe you disagree with some of what he says. I don't know that I agreed with 100% of what he said, but I wouldn't spend a minute thinking that I should do something physical to someone else. So now this takes us to our educational establishment, who we've had a number of incidents in the last week where people in education are doing what? Losing it. So let's take a look at this particular picture. This is a woman. She's a she's a teacher in Chicago. And her principal, so this is radical Chicago, the one where Pritzker says everything's okay. Who cares if I have the highest murder rate in the United States? And the murder rates in the four biggest cities in America is what makes America's murder rate so high around the world. Well, so this is a Chicago teacher. Now, if you go and look this up, you should Google it and see the video of her. She's moving to the side and she has her hand like a gun to a neck, referring to Charlie Kirk and saying that he deserved this, had it coming to him. This is a teacher. Now, don't stop with the teacher. The principal said she's the victim. She's a victim of what? But that's the left. Victor David Hanson talks all the time how we've gone from Democrat and Republican to oppressor and oppressed. And so that's the Democrat Party. If you're not getting something from government, you're oppressed. If you're not succeeding, you're oppressed. And you have a right to strike out against your oppressors. So she's the victim. And the Democrats have completely lost any sense that government is a service organization. Instead, government is the employer in chief. I mean, think about, if we go back to that, Congresswoman Clark talking about leverage time. She's not talking. She says families that are going to suffer. She's not actually talking about resolving things for people. She is using this for political purposes. This is a party game. Her party needs to win. That's more important than families that are going to suffer. So where is the Democrat Party today? They support Jay Jones in Virginia, who said that his opponents should be killed and his kids are Nazis. They continue to support him. They have a guy running for Senate in Massachusetts who had to cover up a Nazi tattoo, and they won't banish him or denounce him in full. I mean, who puts a Nazi tattoo on? Oh, he said he did bad things as a youth. I'm sorry. That's a little past bad, forgivable things that you so believe in Nazi that you create a tattoo, right? And then they have this woman in Chicago who thinks, like others, that political violence is somehow a solution for their party. What is it, though, that they're actually doing? It's gone. It's lost. There is no actual, the Democrats are doing the right thing. They're going to be defined by Mondami, by Jeffries, by Brandon Johnson and Pritzker in Chicago, and Karen Bass in LA, and Gavin Newsom. Harris is done. That's who the Democrats are going to be. That's their top six. Say it again. Mondami, Jeffries, Brandon Johnson, Pritzker, Bass, and Newsom. That is the Democrat Party. So look them all up. Realize how radical they are. Don't believe for a minute that they are going to be reasonable. As Jeffrey said, we're going to hold you accountable no matter how long it takes for your views. That's who the Democrat Party is. And there's no coming back from that. Their next generation, Scott Wiener running for Pelosi's seat, is one of the most radical people in California. He'll be there for life. You're going to have AOC collect one of the biggest fundraisers. This is their group. And New York, Chicago, and Newsom and Bass in LA, they're going to be driving the agenda along with the radical groups. And there simply is no coming back from that. But as Doug LaMalfa was talking about at the end there, you got to get out there and vote in common sense. If you think that Prop 50 doesn't affect you and you're listening to my voice anywhere in the world, Doug LaMalfa proved that was the opposite, because they're going to drive environmental policies. Food production in California will be harmed long term. Food prices will go up, on and on and on. There's no end to how hard they will push unless we vote back. I didn't say push back. I said vote back. And as far as those in Washington who spied on others, as Doug LaMalfa says, people have to go to jail for this. Because if they don't, someone will do it again. And that's the state of affairs. We live in this divided era, okay? But that doesn't mean we can sit back. And if you're in California listening to me and you don't do something about Prop 50, it's going to get really bad in this state. And it's only ourselves to blame, because we have the opportunity to turn this down. And by not giving to the effort to turn it down, not calling people, and otherwise, California is going to be really harmed. And that means the country's really harmed. That's politics in perspective this week. Next week, John Jordan's going to be with me talking all things Trumponomics and what lies ahead. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks a lot to Ex America News and worldviewtube.com, and we'll see you next week.